Okay, so for you, Anna, I wanted to make a video because you seem to not understand what I was talking about. I understand you're not Black American, and from my perspective, I've always respected that. What I am trying to say is that there are plenty of Nigerians actually who have my phenotype. This is the thing. If you were to go to a specific platform or specific pages for Nigerian people, most of the time, for me, I've never had them think I was mixed, like ever. They can kind of look at me and see that I have the same features as them. And the people I am showing in these photos literally share my own complexion, and they are Nigerian descent. I actually did a video on light-skinned Black people, and specifically showed an African Nigerian woman who was light-skinned, period. Nigerians can come light-skinned. You do understand that East Africans are light-skinned, right? Sometimes. Central Africans are light-skinned as well, and some Nigerians are too. If you look at where Nigeria is, it kind of makes sense. I mean, like, if there are many light-skinned Central Africans, of course, there could be some light-skinned Nigerians. One time with Ancestry DNA, they split everybody up with Nigerian ancestry, and many of the people with Yoruba heritage, which tends to be a bit darker, got more Togo, Benin, and the rest of us got like Central Africa, Cameroon, Congo. It's to show you that many of the time I think the lighter skinned ones have more of a relation to the ones in Central Africa. Now that's not to say that they're not black, though obviously Central Africans are black. They just happen to have a lot more light-skinned people in that area. Now with that said, I understand there are light-skinned Africans in a lot of parts of Africa. I'm just saying, particularly with Central Africans, it's a large amount of the population, more than a lot of other populations. And I'm not saying they're the majority, I'm just saying they're very frequent. So, to me, I don't have an issue with the idea that you think light-skinned Black people don't exist and that they all are mixed. Because, to me, from my perspective, I've seen a lot of people like you who don't really understand Black people who have a lighter complexion. By the way, I don't even consider myself light-skinned, I consider myself light brown, pretty much. And there's a lot of people with my complexion who are Black, who basically identify as brown skin too, that are my complexion. To name a few on YouTube, you'd have Cerebro, there's what's her name, The Mademoiselle, Lifestyle with Danielle, and so forth. So, I mean, like, there are a lot of different people who are around my complexion who identify as brown-skinned, light brown-skinned, and similar complexion to these women. I understand that people see light skin as different things. I don't really think light skin indicates anything to me. To me, more facial features do, and even then, not completely, because I could even argue many of these women are mixed by their facial features, because they do have different facial features than what you think a West African should have, I guess. But obviously genetics show you that they aren't mixed. So do we need anything else to prove they're mixed when they are fully African people themselves? So to me, I think a lot of people get a little bit more hooked onto the ideas of what they see black as and what they see mixed as, especially when they come from families like yours, where, I saw your father. Your father is very dark skinned. He's really the type that I've interacted with that always doesn't realize there's other types of black people. Now, I'm not saying your father is like that. I'm saying that's the phenotype of some people that I've seen that will not recognize that black people have different phenotypes sometimes. Sometimes they think that everyone looks like them, and then they ask you if you're mixed. But we're not. They probably just come from a different part of Africa, basically. If you look at Africans anyway, they vary in phenotype and looks. A lot of people who are mixed or biracial may not recognize this. All they've seen really was the dark-skinned black person they came from and mixed people, but they don't actually see actual Africans. And they never get to take the DNA test and be like, oh, I'm 90% black. Oh, I'm 80% black. Oh, I'm 70% black. And, this is where my ancestry is from. They don't get to do that because, you don't have that DNA. I get to do that because when I did my DNA test, that's what I get. And so for me, it's like, oh, this is where my heritage is from. It's okay to be confused or not know before you take a DNA test what you are when you're a black American, because we understand our background. But after you know, there's really no point in lying to yourself or lying to anyone else about, what you are. I will say that, for me, from my perspective, it's like this, when I was younger, I was confused, like I said. I didn't know why a lot of black people asked me if I was mixed. But then, what I did was I did this experiment kind of thing. I posted photos of Hausa, Fulani, Nigerian people, and I got the same damn response. Where people are saying they're Indian or they're mixed with Arab and blah 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 blah. So I understood that, okay, they're not mixed, but a lot of black Americans, one, will be confused, and a lot of Africans who don't have their heritage will be confused. That doesn't mean that they're not black, it just means somebody got confused. That's not them. So, another part of what I wanted to address was this, and I think this is very valid, a valid point you brought up. One drop rule. I do. I honestly think that, you're right. It is a racist law and rule that was put on black people by white people. But you have to understand, what is the one drop rule? The one drop rule did not just have to do with people who were half black. It specifically had to do with anyone who was 1/8 of either heritage. So if you're 1/8 black to 1/8 white. Long ago, they used to cash in on black people having white ancestry. So if you were a quarter white, they might get more than if you were an old world black person, for example. Do you know how many people are 1/8 or 1/4 white? Who isn't? That's what I want to know. Who isn't at least 10% non-black? From what I've seen, basically everyone that I've looked at for their DNA results were within the 10 to 90% range if they were Black Americans of African ancestry. So, if that's the case, you're saying that black people should be called mixed, but that's really not going to work in this society because then nobody's going to be black, you understand, right? Because Black Americans are 90% black on the high end. On average, they're like 78% black. That means that on average, a Black American is almost a quarter white. So if we are going off of removing the one-drop rule, nobody's going to be black. And then you could say, oh, but then they are the ones who look black to you. Let's go off that. No, that's not true. Because most of the time, from what I've heard from dark-skinned black people, is they get asked if they're mixed too. They might not get asked if they're mixed with the same things you're asked if you're mixed with, or if I'm asked, for that matter. But they still get asked if they're mixed. Usually they get asked if they're mixed with Indians. South Asian, that is. Many of the time, people might even confuse them for South Asian people at times. Has to do with their facial features. And you could say, why is that? Is it because they have European ancestry? I don't know. You could actually argue it could have to do with the fact that they're between 10% to 25% white. I mean, heck, it's enough to have a grandparent that's mixed or a mother that's mixed. Or father, for that matter. So, to me, that's my perspective, okay? I don't really, think that being mixed is this complicated that we have to include everybody in on it. I think biracials, we understand they're mixed because of the parent that they have, and we understand people who are less than 25% aren't going to look like black people. So to me, their experiences are different. But a Black American, to me, the percentage of a Black American can range from 50 to 100%. Well, not really 100%, 97%. And it's not 100. There's one girl that tested 97%. That's the highest I've ever seen a Black American. But generally, Black Americans fall somewhere in between that. And mostly they don't go above 90% black. So then with that idea, that means that you're basically saying that everybody's mixed because Black Americans would either be Griffs or Socotra, which would be in the mixed race categories of long ago before the one-drop rule. So, to me, that's just my perspective. I think at this point, we gotta let go of that. I mean, I don't think you ignore it, because honestly, with Black Americans, our European heritage influences us more than African heritage does. As sad as that is, what it is, what it is. So I mean, like, you don't need to ignore the fact that you have European in you, but it's safe to say that Black in America is someone who is admixed. That's just how Black Americans are. They're always admixed. Even the lady who's 97% Black is still admixed technically. Like, you can't find a Black American who's fully Black. That just doesn't occur. So I'm just saying, I think I've explained my position on this. I respect your identity. You are half Hispanic. I'm not saying that you're like a Black American. What I'm saying is that, the identity of being a Black American, as I am a Black American, I can define that, obviously. And, it's not being multi-generationally mixed, because technically, to me, multi-generationally mixed means technically two different things, and I guess you can include the latter as my own situation, but I don't really see it that way. Multi-generationally mixed is really supposed to mean that your average is going to be 50%, right? Your estimate is going to be 50% because that basically specifies that most of your ancestors were were mixed race, basically, were half black. But then some people will also talk about the whole thing about multi-generationally mixed, where you have ancestry where it varies, basically. You could be like 30% to 90% African ancestry, depending on the chromosome. And some people would say that's a sign of being multi-generationally mixed too. But that really, to me, it's just a sign that, no, I don't see it as you are multi-generationally mixed. I see it as, okay, your ancestors were multi-generationally mixed. And that's why you have that large range there. For me, I've said it before, I have a range where I start from 45% all the way up to 96%, and I've showed my DNA results before in its whole entirety. So, I mean, I don't consider that multi-generationally mixed still, because it's just like, well, if most of your ancestors are from Africa, just because you have some DNA that implies that you're half black, that's still not gonna make you mixed, because most of your ancestors are still from Africa. You know what I mean? And I know that can have to do with phenotype too. For me, I don't really see that it does that much, because one thing, my mother's family is Nigerian descent too. Her family comes from Imo, Nigeria, when she took the DNA test, basically. And my phenotype was never different from theirs. And they don't have the hack in their chromosomes. That's from my dad. So I understand it's not particularly got to do with my phenotype. Maybe my eye shape a little bit, I think it might, but nothing really specifically strong in my phenotype, okay? So that's just how I see it, you know. I understand you have a different experience than me. You are a biracial woman, you know. You are mixed. I am black, so I have a different experience. We might be similar complexions. That's still not going to signify you came from someone who is not black. I came from a black woman, and my father is mixed race, you know, heritage. But he didn't actually come from anyone who was non-black either, for that matter. Two mixed parents, basically. Which is the reason I have a lot of range, but yeah, I do like your perspective in your videos, though. I mean, like, it's nice to see, because, I mean, like, you know, we all come from different walks of life, and we have different experiences, so we come to different conclusions on different things, but you still make sense. So that's why I like your content, and it's fine, but I just wanted to explain that, because it didn't seem you understood my perspective as a black woman who just happens to have a different heritage than some other black people. Thank you.